Welcome to the High Jinks Podcast. This is Jared Marshall. I'm sitting down with Matt Kundle today, a former program director at Power 97, currently 97.5 Big FM in Winnipeg, and we're just going to talk.
Do you know that I have a long resume before that, too?
I'm sure you do.
It's very traveled.
Very.
It went from, I think I started radio in Nova Scotia.
Really?
Well, at Acadia University way back in 1989.
Wow.
Actually, no, it was 1988. And then from there, spent 5 years in the Annapolis Valley of Nova Scotia. Went to Montreal, did all-night radio. Something that, there's very few all-night radio shifts left. But although Graham Mosman, who was working at Power 97 up until about August, he's now doing an all-night show in Calgary at X92.9. So it's great to see some radio stations are still putting in the all-night show, finding value with it. I mean, albeit in bigger cities, you need to be Calgary. Montreal, you definitely have to have an all-night show because that city never sleeps.
Never, yeah.
Toronto goes to bed at 2 o'clock, gets up around 5:30.
Yeah, I've actually been getting a couple comments, just people that work overnight shifts. They really miss the overnight broadcast, and right now it's just music. There's no live personalities.
Yeah, it was really special doing all-night radio. I did it for, well, it's one thing when you do it in the Annapolis Valley because you're just convinced that cows are listening. But it was more than just cows. There was a lot of people who were up late. In this day and age, around 1996, I think there was, when Lady Diana was killed, it changed. People began to get their information from the internet. They learned that they can go online and chat and get their information 24/7 from
just
a computer.
On demand, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't like that just, before 1996. Before then, there was an all-night DJ. You listened to them. You got your information. They kept you company. That was really where it was at back then.
Yeah, it used to be like personal relationships between the listener and the on-air personality. You'd identify with somebody, and that would be the person you'd stick to, your go-to broadcast.
There was a lot of late-night phone calls, a lot of people. I've made a number of friends off the hit line, and as it were, at a radio station. Two of my best friends I still keep in touch with today. I met with over the airwaves at one at Showman Montreal, the other at the Bear in Edmonton when I worked there, and best friends, and came to my wedding.
Yeah, yeah, it's great. Cultivate friendships, just stick with you forever, and yeah, it's kind of what I'm hoping to get into and network, and you're a big part of that for me, and I appreciate you coming in and doing this for me. So,
well, it's great. It's great to be here. It's fun just to be able to freewheel, and that's that's one of the things we're finding with podcasting. Or if you're streaming it live on the internet or whatever platform you're using, guys like Humble and Fred in Toronto.
Oh yeah,
they had a career years ago doing over the air radio. They worked at Edge, and then later became Mojo for a little bit. They went down the dial to 640, I believe it was called Mojo, and then then the Mix, and then they went onwards. But then at one point they just didn't find over the air work anymore, but they had this huge brand. And it was, alive and well, and they wanted to keep it going. And so now they've got a studio in Toronto, humbleandfred.com, podcast every day, work hard.
And they did kind of branch out a little, because I remember when I used to live Southern Ontario, I'd see Fred on Teletoon. He'd do like the segue in between, like during commercials, like going back from the break into the show. I remember seeing him a lot on TV. So
yeah, and that's something that's going. Actually, I think that's Fearless Fred you're thinking of.
Yeah, I think
I was talking Humble and Fred from...
okay, different
Humble
Fred.
And Fred. Yeah,
okay.
Just different in there. But there's another guy. I want to talk about Fred, Fearless Fred, for a bit, because he's also another guy, well-traveled, did the all-night stint. I'm trying to think of the places he worked, but he did work at Power 97 here in Winnipeg.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, and then he did a number of years The Drive at the Bear in Edmonton, which I think... I did that for throughout the 90s. He did that throughout the decade we fondly know as the 2000s, and then found himself working Drive at Edge in Toronto, and now is the morning guy at the Edge in Toronto, and also has following, as you mentioned, on Teletoon.
So it was like Winnipeg always home for you, or is this just kind of where you ended up?
No, I'm a Montrealer. I'm an Anglophone Montrealer, one of the 700,000 that stayed behind after the big exodus of 1976. Wound up going to Acadia University in the Maritimes, and just loved it there, and found radio and this beautiful school in the Annapolis Valley, and political science and history, and these tenured professors who were writing the textbooks who just wanted to live in a small town, and I had access to these great minds. As I went and took my political science degree in So I'm going to do radio instead.
Oh, yeah. I saw something yesterday, like, what do you do with a political science degree other than sit on the couch? Like,
Yeah, pretty much. You watch the National.
Yeah.
You wait for Rex Murphy. You yell at your TV, and then
Yeah.
and then you move on.
like a typical Canadian, you got to yell at the TV. So, speaking of East Coast, I'm from PEI, and I'd always imagine myself ending up back there, but I don't imagine the market is very big in PEI right now. So,
Well, Charlottetown's doing is interesting. They've got 4 radio stations there, and I know that because I've been working closely with some people down there. But Q93 is a rock station there, doing quite well for itself, starting to make a name and move itself up and tweak their format.
like a modern rock station or
Not
more
quite,
classic? No.
They're not there yet. They should be.
Yeah.
A few more phone calls, and maybe I'll have them moving a little bit. Newcap has great radio properties down in Prince Edward Island, and they've done very, very well for years. And they've also, radio, this is one of the struggle they have down in the Maritimes, and that's they love to automate. They don't want to keep too many people around, but with the winter they've had, it's just been nothing but snow, snow, snow.
Yeah.
Where are you going to go for this information? Yeah, you can get it from the internet. What are you going to do when the power goes out? And they found that with Hurricane Sandy. People didn't know where to go. The power's out in New York City, so everybody goes running into their car to listen to the radio.
Yeah.
So radio is still incredibly viable, especially in moments of disaster. Heaven forbid that there's war that should ever break out anywhere, but it's just you're going to need radio.
Yeah, with a 25 or 24-hour live broadcast, it's going to be up to date. You can tune in, and you're going to get the most relevant information that you need, like as you need it. And it's great that that's able to thrive with on-demand entertainment, especially taking over.
There's going to be a disaster in this country at some point that's going to merit people being at a radio station, and the CRTC is going to legislate that you're going to have live bodies on call. Something down the line is going to precipitate that. There was in Moncton, another one in the Maritimes, we had the shooter who was loose.
Yes, yeah.
And we had some police officers who were killed, but the shooter was on the loose for 24 hours. So I tuned into the local news station who were running a sports show out of Boston at the time. And I thought, what a shame for radio to have a missed opportunity and not be able to give information to people immediately as to what to do, where the shooter might be located, and where to take cover, because that's all people were clamoring for.
Yeah.
And when people don't go to the radio first, they're going to go to the internet. And then the next time there's a disaster, they'll go to the internet. So it's bad training.
Yeah, you miss it once, and it's basically gone forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just lose that audience.
And I think the fear is that actually it's the reality. The reality is that younger demos, anybody below the age of 30, doesn't go to the radio first for their music. They're probably not going first there for their news. So radio right now for that younger generation, the millennials, needs to coexist. They need to find a way to coexist and be a part of their lives.
Yeah, because I know a lot of people, they listen to the radio either as like background noise at work, they're not really paying attention, or just for the 10, 15 minutes they're in the car driving to work in the morning.
And that's okay, because that's a great utility. Radio is a fantastic utility. First thing in the morning, CJOB here in Winnipeg, that's the best thing about it. It's a utility. Everything else just seems to be some form of music, but it's a utility where you can get your information, your news, your weather, your sports, get all that stuff while you're in the car going to work. You don't need to be fumbling around. You shouldn't be fumbling around on a telephone or anything else while you're listening. Just get your information, and they also do a good job on the way home. You get your information on the way home. It's all good. You're up to date when you walk in the door.
Yeah, CJOB has always been really good for that, and everything else just seems focused on entertainment and really just messing around on air, it seems like, lately. So
the format's not new. I think Wins 1010 or one of those New York radio stations years ago said 15 minutes is all you'll need, or I don't know exactly which station.
Or really all you should need.
Exactly. Yeah. But radio has now got to master that, and all formats got to figure out how we're going to get 15 minutes of entertainment to people while they're driving.
Yeah.
And guess what? You're also going to have to compete as an FM station. You're going to have to compete with all the other toys that are going to be coming into the car. Your iPod's already in the car. Your Bluetooth's already in the car. It's all there.
Yeah, it's just you're surrounded by distractions now while you're in your car, and the radio is a lot of people's last thought getting in. I can't wait to drive to work and listen to the radio. I used to be like that for sure. I'd never have my iPod or listen to CDs in the car driving to work. It's always just radio, because that's how I would discover new bands and stuff like that. And speaking of that, I'm finding a severe lack of modern music like modern, especially rock or like indie or folk. Like it seems like a market that isn't really touched upon, especially in Winnipeg, I notice.
Not necessarily on the radio, but that same generation of people who are below 30, they're getting it, but they're getting it from other places.
Yeah.
We could say the same thing about sex. Once the internet started up, we all started getting our sex from different places.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. Wow, look at there's all these wonderful internet channels now that are open, right? So there were other industries, the videotape industry, for instance, began to take a hit. The video stores the XXX video stores began to take a hit, and things changed. And this is just part of it. And
porn actually kind of leads the media market. Like when it came to like when Blu-ray was first introduced and there was HD DVD alongside it, everybody was clamoring, okay, what's going to be the next big thing? And, porn sided with Blu-ray, so that's what ended up taking off. Like, they seem to almost lead the distribution, I don't know how to say, like, distribution.
I'm not so certain I want my porn in high definition.
Why not? Because now you got HD or 60 frames per second where it looks smooth, and
sometimes there's too much detail. Sometimes I don't really want to know how not so good looking the performers are.
Yeah.
I think one of the greatest things now is you can just shoot your own porn.
Yeah.
We're all stars now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody has got videos or pictures that they keep secret and don't.
I think people get a rush out of that. I think people like to carry. If you don't have any secrets, people are bored by that. I think people need to carry secrets.
Yeah.
They want to. They want to have something to hide. They want to have something to keep to themselves. Everything else is out in the open. You've parted with all your personal information, whether it's on Facebook or Twitter. Opened yourself up probably way too much. Had some alcohol, and maybe that picture is now floating about the internet. People do have an insatiable need to keep something private or some secrets, and the secrets are very, very dirty now.
Yeah, and if you think back, like, say, 20 years, people would keep diaries, and they'd be very secretive to make sure nobody would read them. Nowadays, everybody puts their diaries online, and they're upset if people don't read them. Like, what are your feelings on that?
Well, we all have an insatiable need to put ourselves out there, but people like the validation of the like. They like to be clicked on. They like to be read. They check their analytics. They also have an insatiable need to be judged.
Would you say it's like a change in society, like with no longer keeping secrets, having everything out there now, or?
No, people are always going to need to keep secrets, but people trade gossip like a commodity now, and guys are now worse than ever. We never used to do this, 20, 30 years ago, and that's swap gossip. But guys are now swapping gossip all over the place. I'm not sure why. They just treat it like a commodity, and it's great to trade. Everybody needs to have a little bit of gossip to pass around.
Yeah. Now, getting back to what I was saying about folk music, as like on the radio, with Winnipeg being like the host city of Folklorama, why would you feel like there's no like folk music station? Is there not the audience for it? You would think with Folklorama being, or Folkfest, like Folkfest being held in Winnipeg, you'd think there'd be an audience for it.
Montreal is one of the biggest jazz festivals in the world, and they don't really have a successful jazz radio station. And most people are very refined. They have their collection. They have their ways. I do believe if you want to have a successful station, it's got to be radio has to be the medium that people discovered the music on. People did not discover the jazz music on the radio, therefore they don't have an emotional connection to it. People did not discover the new bands of today on the radio, which is why stations that target 18 to 34-year-olds are having a harder time reaching out and connecting with youth.
Yeah, the 18 to 34 demo seems to be mostly focused on appealing to like a female audience, like with the pop stations and the way the commercials come off on that. It seems to be mostly geared to females.
Well, that music gets released to radio, and it is discovered on radio, and people are going to hear it on the radio, especially Beyonce. She releases an album, doesn't tell anybody, and it shows up on the radio the next day. It's the way people heard it the first time. It's absolutely great for radio. That's why you have more top 40 stations now.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the way, rock bands didn't get the right relationship with rock radio in order to make the format really thrive. Country, you watch the way they do country. Country's done well. There are program directors, afternoon drive people who are announcing at the Country Music Awards. They're a part of the process. There's a respect between the artists and the radio people. it doesn't exist in rock for. It does with a few bands. I mean, Shinedown, they know it. They know how to play the game. They do it really well. They'll come and come to your station events. Buck Cherry, they'll do it too. Over the years, they learned because they grew up in that era. But for some reason, something went wrong along the way that a lot of the top bands just didn't really want to partner with radio. Metallica, they won't let you use a video of their song as part of your TV campaign. Foo Fighters, same thing. AC/DC, same thing. You can't. The core artists of rock don't want to appear in your radio TV commercial because it's selling out. Well, guess what? Now your shows don't sell out anymore.
Yeah, because the audience isn't seeing you because you're not distributing yourself. You're not putting yourself out there. So how do people discover you now?
Yeah, the rock stations, didn't do themselves any favors as well by having, having some dumb promotions or just not getting along with artists or being too cool for the room. Something.
Is it like a machismo kind of thing, or do you think? Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of things that were unaccommodating about a lot of stations and artists. And sometimes artists were too strung out. Sometimes they were too into themselves. I just, with a number of artists that I've interviewed over the years, there was always a problem. There's always a freaking problem with some people. Days of the New. That guy was strung out. He would show up strung out. Matthew Good was always cranky.
Really?
He was just so cranky. He just didn't want to be in the studio. He was rude. And this is, it wasn't just with me, it was with other radio stations. He was rude. And I can't go back to the record people and go, what's his problem anyway? We were a station that was there at the very beginning. The Bear in Edmonton and CFOX, we were the first stations to be playing his work. And he's just a cranky SOB. Anyways,
which doesn't really make sense because you're there to promote their work. You're putting them out there. Like, you would think they'd want to have a good relationship with the radio stations because that's how most people are going to hear their music.
Well, this brings it back to what I said about people having secrets and people wanting to hide things. Maybe people didn't want to be asked questions they didn't want to answer on the radio, be made to look stupid. You don't always have control of your persona and of the message. And artists are that way.
Yeah.
And I get that. The best thing you could do when you interview somebody is to try to have some respect and understand where they come from. Don't ask a stupid question. Try to make them feel comfortable. There's generally no need to challenge anybody of these artists. They just want to open up and talk. One of the greatest rules you can come up with if you're going to interview is don't talk about their music. Because you know what? Listeners already know about their music. They're already into it. They already have researched into it. So one of the rules I have is let's just talk about things that are completely different that don't have anything to do with music.
Yeah, you want to get to know the person behind the music, like where the music is coming from.
Yeah. Eventually, we started to find out some things. I remember there was a 90s band called Tonic.
Oh, yeah. I remember Tonic.
Yeah, we found out that the Emerson, the lead singer, he could do armpit farts. He had 30 different variety of armpit farts. Well, that was a great show that day.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah. So if you did a little bit of homework and some digging, you could always find a great take with some artists and have them on. But there were some real funny ones over there. Creed, there's another one. He threw up on my shoes. Holly McNarland, she threw up on my lap.
Oh, God.
There was some interesting times back in the 90s. And Ozzy Osbourne, I had him as a guest on the air. He was every question I had. I over prepped the interview. I should have been talking about the music and the tour and getting too into it.
Yeah.
Every answer was, well, you'll have to ask my wife Sharon. And I said, that's a funny answer. Well, 2 years later, he's got this reality show. We all found it funny.
Yeah. Well, Sharon being his manager too, like she'd handle all that, right?
So why are you getting a band like Filter to open up for you? I don't know. You have to ask my wife Sharon. She does all the booking. And how are things on Letterman? I don't know. She just told me to go down and watch just TV show Letterman.
It's different times now. I guess they were kind of on the forefront of reality TV, almost. Because I remember watching that show. I had the DVD box sets, and I'd just sit down and laugh my ass off. But it also kind of took away from his credibility because he was kind of held on a pedestal as like this heavy metal god, and then it shows him in his slippers and underwear playing with his dogs. Like, do you think maybe that had an effect on his image?
Yeah, we loved it.
Yeah.
We loved it. We loved it so much we couldn't get enough. And when he showed up, and I remember Edmonton 1996 and did a show, he forgot the lyrics and he stumbled around the stage. He wasn't drunk. He was just totally out of it. But we had no idea because the internet hadn't really taken off. We just didn't know what happened to Ozzy. The songs were coming out and they were clean. No More Tears in '91.
Yeah.
great record, 95. I think there was another song, Back on Earth, and some stuff in 95 he came out with. But we think it's clean. It's just like the 1970s. But no, there's stuff that had gone on.
Yeah. Speaking No More Tears, probably one of my favorite guitar solos of all time. I worship Zakk Wylde. Like, I don't know if you've listened to Black Label Society.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You like them?
Yeah, there's another one. There's a lot of fans for BLS. High Passion. They come back to Winnipeg all the time. They're always playing. And it's the same fans over and over again. I'll also make that argument about music. When you have a jazz station, when you have a hair metal station, there's a lot of high passion with that music, but it doesn't make for a lot of great radio numbers.
Yeah.
It doesn't make anything sellable. Those people have already, drank the Kool-Aid. They've already bought the T-shirt.
Yeah, it's not a big audience, but it's a passionate audience.
Yeah, it's tough to grow that audience.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Now, since leaving Power 97 last year, I understand you work from home now. What do you do to keep yourself busy?
Got a media company, doing about 3 different things in that media company that I've started. Doing some local marketing for some people, doing some radio consulting, doing some voiceover, helping talent. So it's got 4 different things in it. So a lot of the things that I used to do at work now, I'm just doing from home. And people are coming to me, and it's great. Makes for an interesting day.
Yeah. Go ahead, promote yourself. What are some of the things you've been doing?
Well, just that sort of thing, but just working with people, and sometimes the consulting, it's in places far away. So if it's in the Maritimes, for instance, I'm up early. A morning show there starts at 4 a.m. our time here, and if it's in BC, it's going to be a little bit later. I've got a later wake-up call, so I'm listening to a lot of morning shows in the process.
Who are some of your favorites?
For morning shows?
Yeah.
Across the country?
Yeah.
Oh, Fearless Fred.
Yeah.
Always listen to Fearless Fred when I can. Humble and Fred. I listen to them, but they've got their own podcast, so that's something I can listen later. Every day I listen to Colin Cowherd on ESPN.
Yeah.
He's got a podcast that drops 2 million. It's just really a recap of his show, but I'll get the tidbits. It's really the epitome of what any radio station should be in any radio show. And I'll tell you why Colin does it right. He has a sports show. Sports is very insular. We saw the game last night. Let's talk about the game. But he doesn't. He won't break it down. He's going to talk about male issues. We'll talk about, things that happen to men who are in the demo, whether it's divorces, whether it's jobs. He will always find a way to take the sports story and relate it to things guys go through, whether it's buying a car, relationships with women.
Yeah.
He finds a way to take the sports story and wind it in. And it's very, very smart. It's incredibly well written. He's got great perspective. And he's very fair, which I think, sometimes you'll disagree and sometimes you'll agree with him, but it's worth a listen every day. And the best part is you don't have to like sports to like the show. You don't need to like rock music to listen to the rock station.
Yeah. Like, you don't always want to listen to something you agree with because you're never going to get an outside opinion and learn anything new.
Yeah.
Kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So,
I had this conversation recently about people. I said, that's great that you want to talk about comic books, but I don't like comic books. How are you going to include me in your show?
Yeah.
How are you going to speak it so that I don't feel alienated? It's the worst thing you can do to your audience is to alienate them and to make them feel like they can't be a part of the show. They'll never be a part of the show. Then they've moved on because there's so many other things they could be listening to.
Oh, especially nowadays, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I think that just about does it for today. Thanks, Matt, for coming in. It's nice to see you again.
Good.
And hope to have you on again.
I'd love to come by anytime, just talk about radio, talk about life, and talk about, audiences.
All right.
And how we can capture, audiences in this age. It can be on the radio. It can be online.
All right. Now, I do have Philly from 92 City coming in tomorrow. I believe that me and you wanted to play a little joke on him. Did you want to record that now, and I'll get some live reactions from him tomorrow and see how it goes?
Yeah, Philly's a great guy. Philly worked at Power 97 when I got there in 2006, and then he found his way out to Alberta and moved on and tried a few other things. I just remember him calling up and begging to come back and work. So I said, yeah, why don't you come back and do drive for us at Power 97? Came time that we had a consideration to put him on the morning show, but he would perpetually insist that Rena J do the show along with him and Wheeler. And I couldn't understand why he kept asking for Rena to be a part of the show. So finally I relented. I said, yeah, absolutely. But once I started listening to the show, I totally understood because Rena's there every day to cover up all of his faux pas and lack of talent. Really, when you scrape Philly the Kid, the very bottom, the only thing that's redeeming about him is his love for the Montreal Canadiens. And, even at times I'm a little bit ashamed that he likes my team.
Well, we can't all be perfect. I'm a Habs fan too, so it's...
I'm just kidding, Philly. I love you. Just throwing you under the bus.
All right.
Call me sometime. We'll do lunch.
All right. Thanks, Matt. This has been High Jinks Presents, and have yourself a good night.
Thank you, sir.